Yeah.
We're in the right place. 11:49. They're all here. The gang's all here. Yeah. We're just waiting on you. All right. Let me get out of that. All right. There you are. Yay, we all made it. How's everybody?
Okay.
Everybody, let me exit full screen and make sure I'm turned up for max for maximum annoyance here. There we go.
You are maximum annoyance. Crystal, I want to know how your defense went.
It went very well. Very well.
We are proud of you.
Thank you.
The good news
1,000 pardons for not making it
is that I was out of town and Dale was sick, so neither of us were there. I know. Dale
I'm so sorry. I'd a lot rather been with you.
Yeah, Dale had a procedure that day. I don't know if he told you. He really wanted to be there. I was in another part of the state, so I couldn't be there. But we're proud of you.
Yes,
well, thank you. One step closer.
Amen.
Just one at a time. That's all
That's
that matters.
right.
As long as the momentum keeps going forward.
That's right.
Wendy, I was with a couple of your co-workers this past weekend, and I defended you to the nth degree.
I hope you did.
I did. I had your
For
back
these last
the
couple
whole
weeks.
time.
That's probably why one of them called me this morning and I didn't answer.
Well, I don't know what they say. I don't know what they say to you, but they certainly were complimentary to me about you.
Well, they're a good group of people.
Yeah, they're working hard, and you're helping them. They need it.
Yeah,
they need it. You got a tough situation.
Yeah, you know.
In the news way too much lately. That's
but now please
I heard
remember.
about that too.
Please remember, and I know you know this since you work with students on a regular basis. Students that need love the most usually deserve it the least. So you have to keep that in mind in our business all the time. That you're doing God's work in Robeson County. Now, again, you hadn't told me what bet you lost to get there to start with, because I know nobody would go of their own volition.
No, I got a call asking me to go.
Well,
I did.
We're glad you did, but they need help. And so we're going to talk about, by extension tonight, we're going to talk a little about Robeson County. Obviously, they were one of the plaintiffs in the Leandro case, and we'll get to that in just a second. First thing I want to cover tonight is as we do each time we get together, is our weekly schedule in terms of where we are. Today is our 11th week. For some reason, I'm wiggling on my end. It's our 11th week. It's October the 29th. We're having our second Zoom session. Today is case study 2, the Leandro case, which is has a case of national implications, not just in North Carolina, but North and South Carolina and other states. Your OMA 1, you should be about close to through with it in Blackboard to upload it, and you should be to discussion board activity 2. You should be there by now. The first one, of course, was your school safety crisis plan, crisis box, all of those things, your assessment inventory. I read those. Those are very good. There's a few of those things that are concerning. But it's never good to have kids moving through either bus traffic or car traffic. That one's kind of hard to defend yourself on when you go to court. Doesn't matter that you inherited a situation like that one. That one is a loser, because usually that means the kid's been seriously injured, and that's never good. But I'm glad that you all have worked through those. Anybody have any questions on OMA or your activities in Blackboard? I hope that you're finding that these activities in Blackboard are, again, I'm not sure that you'll always remember them, but you will remember to go and look. It'll trigger something, kind of episodic memory. You'll go and look and you'll ask somebody again. And Steve has made that point, and it's very well taken. Is that you need a peer group. You need people you can ask. You need to find out who knows things, and that's kind of what we're getting you in the habit of doing, is going and asking. There's a lot of value in that. Is going and asking the people who are in charge of those things. So that's why I have you doing all this coming and going to and froing. It's to get you in the habit of going to ask. Once you break that barrier down, your job becomes a whole lot easier, and you realize that you're not in it alone. Administration can be a lonely business if you don't learn to lean on others and ask. That's kind of why we have you doing that. So any questions on our activities or our task in the OMA? I don't mean to drag up dirty laundry here, but one of the things that we talked about the last time that we were together face-to-face, the case in Gaston County, that went to court this week. Did anybody follow that? No, nobody saw that.
I followed it.
You want to give us a synopsis of that?
Well, she pled guilty. And so in addition to surrendering her license, she was given a suspended sentence, which was not met well with the mother of the young man involved. But she will be on probation for 2 years. I believe it's 24 months, and be a sex offender for 30 years. So it's it's a tough price to pay for total stupidity, but on the other hand, I think there are those who would have preferred to see a more stiff penalty for it. So that was in the paper today, but the case is resolved. I talked to the superintendent today, and coming at it from the perspective of this being the headline, of the school district. Doesn't matter what else is happening. This is the headline, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it did at least put that one. It should be the last major article on it now, and the school district can take on its next battle. But it's a hard thing, and there is no explanation. I mean, but I'm going to tell you, folks, if you get in the administration, you will end up dealing with this at some point.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dr. Laws, I don't know if you know, but Iredell State School is in the news right now for a teacher putting a student in a trash can.
Oh my, no, I did not know that.
Yes, and it happens to be one of the people that was in your very first class. It's her that is the charges are being brought against.
Uh-oh.
It was in our cohort class.
Well, now, Jody, if we were doing this face to face, I would put you on probation, because the inference there was that she didn't learn anything from me. And by the way, I know that that's true, but that still hurts. I just want you to know that I put your name on the board as being on probation.
Okay. I'll take it.
Wow.
All right.
She put a child in a trash can?
Was that the special needs kid?
An EC child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I never would have thought it from this person, but.
Wow.
He is, so.
No. You never know, but these are the things you have to deal with. This is what you do. I tell the story of one of my golfing partners in CMS, and he was an elementary at the principal at the time, and he came to me. I was senior high chairman, was high school principal, and he said, "Would you support me They're creating these new regional assistant superintendent for quality assurance. They're creating these jobs, and I've applied. Would you back me for this? And, you know, give a reference to me. And I said, sure. And so, sure enough, about 6 weeks later, he got the job. And then at the end of the year, we were playing golf again, and he was whining and complaining about what a terrible job it was. And I said to him, John, what part of regional assistant superintendent for quality assurance was unclear to you? They just created a complaint department because the people in the Ed Center were tired of dealing with crazies. And so they hired you to deal with the crazies. That's kind of your job, or that is your job. And so what other work would you be getting to if you weren't dealing with crazies every day? This is a standalone position. You don't supervise anybody. You don't have anybody that reports to you. You don't have anything to do other than to handle all these irate calls. That's just what you do. And he said, but, you know, I wasn't expecting that. And I said, but you were a high school principal at one time, weren't you? He said, yeah. I said, I'd kind of forgotten that part of it. The point of the story is, when they put you in leadership positions, or when you achieve those positions, the whole notion is that you're there to deal with conflict and problems. And Steve's absolutely right. Unfortunately, this misbehavior kinds of things, you will have to deal with these things when you become an administrator. And if you're not good with conflict, it's not good. I mean, that's one of the things you're going to have to deal with. Now, I intentionally listened to the Noonday News yesterday, and Channel 3 in Charlotte implied that the situation in Gaston County, that there was another student involved as well, but that he was 18. And so I don't know where that's going to go, or whether they just made that up, or what that is, but that may boomerang back around. And again, the lightness of the sentence, a suspended sentence, the district will have to carry the problem coming from that as well. These won't go away. You know.
Well, it was brought out in court, I believe, and so I don't know that it will bring it back up.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that it.
I think the sentence is the sentence, but yes, it does appear that there was more than one student involved.
Yeah, and so
I've got to switch, because I know you're going to get into the discussion of tonight. But speaking of conflict, Aaron, I got to know, have you found any more snakes in your house?
No more snakes, thank goodness.
Okay.
And thank you for reminding her of that.
Well, it made for an interesting Saturday or Sunday, whichever day. Well, I believe it was a Sunday morning.
Yeah, it did. All right, but the point of going back and revisiting that is you hope that you put these things to bed, but if that you can move on and you move off the news cycle, but there'll be something else that replaces it. And that's one of the things that we learn as school administrators is, you know, Jimmy's giving you a fit in class, but what people don't understand is if you got rid of Jimmy, somebody else to step up and take his place. You have to put things in place to deal with these situations, and you have to understand that they're ever evolving, that when this crisis goes there, it'll be quiet till the next crisis comes. And but if you're one of those people who doesn't understand that, then this job will beat you down. You'll take it personally. You'll take it home with you, and it will wear you out. It will absolutely wear you out. And that leads us, and I wanted to bring that thought up as we move tonight into Leandro, is if you sat and thought about all that kids don't get and how disadvantaged they are, it weighs on you so emotionally and so hard that sometimes you might make a decision that maybe not the right decision to make, but your heart was in the right place, but you forgot that you might have to follow the law. And that's kind of where we are tonight as we move into Leandro. And so I'll start our share again. All right. And so case study 2 is a national landmark case with Leandro. Does anybody want to tell us what Leandro was about, or? All right. 5 low wealth districts in North Carolina sued the state of North Carolina over their funding formula. The funding formula in North Carolina is a flat grant funding formula, or a flat funding formula, which says you get that the state allots money per pupil to the local education agency. There are 114 LEAs in North Carolina. There's one in each of the 100 counties, and there are still 14 city districts in North Carolina. Like Mooresville Graded in Iredell County, where Jody is. Mooresville Graded is one of those 14 city districts. Weldon, there's one in Roanoke Rapids. There's one in Thomasville. There's still 14 of those plus the 100. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. They all have an LEA, a local education agency, or a school district. And so those 114 school districts in North Carolina, they get a flat amount of money from the state every year per pupil. And for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to say it's $7,000. All right, so that $7,000 per pupil comes to the school district every year, per pupil. Now, please remember that North Carolina works on the modified accrual accounting system, and that means that you don't get the $7,000 up front. You get $700 in 10 equal payments, minus your absentee rate. So one of the 2 reports that's filed electronically each month now through PowerSchool is your principal's report, which has your average daily attendance on it, or average daily membership, principal's monthly report, PMR, and we'll talk about the SAR, school activity report. That's your master schedule, but the principal's monthly report has your attendance. And so if your district attendance is 95%, the state subtracts 5% from the $700 per pupil that they send you. You only get paid when students are in class or when they're in school. You don't get paid just because they're on the roll. And you don't get all the money up front. You spend the money, you have to have enough money on hand in your operating budget to pay for the first month, and then you voucher the state, and they basically reimburse you at the end of each month for what you spent, based on that $7,000 per pupil. And so now, what the low wealth district said was there was an inequity between funding, and then people said, no, everybody gets $7,000. They said, no, in the end. We want equity in the end, not just from the state, but what we're looking for is at the end of the day, when you take the state money and the local money that the local county commissioners give the district. Please remember, in North Carolina and South Carolina, school boards are unempowered. They can't levy their own taxes. They come from the county commissioners. And they set a budget every spring. The school district sets a budget, and the county commissioners fund that budget. So they give them their money. And so they can add money to what the state provides each child. But that $7,000 has become known as their basic education or Leandro right, that every child has a right to a basic education, and that the state funds that at $7,000 per pupil. And these low wealth districts said, we can't afford to add any money to that to help better educate our children. And let's take a look at Charlotte-Mecklenburg. At that time, Charlotte-Mecklenburg was adding an additional $4,000 per pupil for a total of $11,000 to educate children in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And these folks said, we want there to be equity at the end of the funding cycle, that in the end, after the state and the local come together, should be equal for everybody across the state of North Carolina. And they proposed district power equalizing, or DPE, and that's a thing. It's in your finance textbooks. What we'll do is so what should happen is instead of the state giving Charlotte-Mecklenburg $7,000 per pupil, the state should give them $5,000. And then they add their $4,000 local money for a total of $9,000. And then they take that $2,000 and give it to a low wealth district to add to their $7,000. And in the end, we both end up with $9,000. They were looking for equity at the end of the cycle, not during the cycle. Because everybody said, look, everybody's getting the same amount. How much more equal could that be? And they said, oh, no. The higher wealth districts have the potential to tax themselves in order so that in the end there's great inequity or disparity between the amount of money in the districts. And we want the courts to rectify that. We want them to enact, instead of flat funding, we want them to enact district power equalizing. And that way every child in the state has the same opportunity. So that's what the Leandro lawsuit was about. Now, what did the court hold? Well, the court said the state has to provide basic funding or your Leandro right, the same amount for every child. They said that, but they said there is no legal right to equal funding at the end. That once you meet that threshold, that $7,000 for a basic education, that the state has no duty to see that you get more money. And these people said, but we don't have the right, we can't tax ourselves. And they said, sure you can, you're just unwilling. And so we'll do it. We will provide you a vehicle to tax yourself. It's called the North Carolina Education Lottery. That's how the lottery got started. The lottery is a regressive tax. Anybody know what a regressive tax is? It's basically a tax on poor people, but it's voluntary. So what they said is, if you won't tax yourself, we'll tax for you. We'll create a lottery that will generate extra revenue for capital things in your district so that you can spend your money that's been going to capital, you can spend it on pure per pupil. Problem is there's not really very much lottery money left over in the end. There is some, and there are some special projects, but it's not consistent, and it's not nearly as much as folks thought it would be. By the time that you pay out the winnings, and by the time you pay the lottery administration company, and by the time that community colleges get their cut, there's not a lot that goes to public schools, and it does one-off projects like a cafeteria in Surrey County or something. I think the NASCAR Institute in Ireland County got a little bit of that money. Brady Johnson, he was superintendent, got a little of that money. But it's inconsistent. It's not. It doesn't add to every child. It's kind of uneven. And so the Leandro case said, no, you only get the money from the state and you can't. But now you should, if you're not providing kids what they need, you should add more to that. You need to give them more to make sure that they're getting that. But you can't. But what they said is you can't take from one to give to the other. And they were very clear in that. No excuses, no, what was the language in the Duke Law School? No exceptions, no excuses. You can't manipulate that state money that the state gives you. If it's supposed to go to Johnny, it's got to go to Johnny. You can't manipulate the state money. Now, we all know that when federal money comes for EC 504, gifted, Title I, CTE, we all know that you can only spend that federal money as it's intended. Leandro basically said the same for state money, that per pupil money. You can't manipulate it. If you want to differentiate in your district, you have to find extra money, and it goes to those students. But you can't take from one and give to another. That was the bottom line on the Leandro cases. You can't take from some students and give it to the others. Now, I'm going to ask Dr. Laws, I'm going to ask him to elaborate or pontificate on why it's a bad idea as former superintendent, why it's a bad idea to take money from one group and give to another.
Well, number one, there are designated pots. And so you have, now you're referring to taking from state pots to federal pots
or moving state money.
Or moving, okay, within its intent. So you cannot spend capital money on current expense money. And current expense is how you pay people and how you pay supplies and materials. I do want to make one note, which is under this umbrella, because we experienced it. When lottery came into being in North Carolina, and I know that several of you are from South Carolina, but when lottery came into being, they also eliminated what was called the corporate tax. And the corporate tax, they didn't eliminate it, but the corporate tax went to current expense money. And the corporate tax is how we paid for capital expenses as well. So in Wilkes County, where I was superintendent, the loss of the corporate tax money was greater than the amount of gain I got from the lottery money.
There you go.
So I had less money to spend. These things are meaningless to you as a school-based administrator. You don't need to know that. But what you need to know is when your superintendent comes to you and says, the money is not there to do, it may be that the superintendent's telling you the truth. And that is something that we battle, isn't it? I mean, there's not, oh, they got the money. And it's not always the case. And because the legislature will do this to pay this. And that's what Dale was talking about. But what you don't hear is they do this to pay this, but in return, we're going to take this, which means that there's not as much money as there was before. So I think what Dale's question was inferring was, it's not smart to pay this with this because you don't know if that over here is no longer there, that you got to move this money over to. So as a school-based administrator, here's my advice. Spend the money for what it's designated to accomplish. You remember when we were together at the very beginning, I said the beauty of both North and South Carolina is you have a chart of accounts. Mm-hmm. Here's the amount of money you get in this budget code. Here's the amount you get in this budget code. And there are some budget codes that can be mingled, and there are some that cannot. But the key to it, going back to another thing that Dale talks about, is know what you can do. Go to the owner's manual. Go to the book that says this is what you can do and this is what you cannot do, and spend it accordingly. And I know I bounced around, but with money, you need to trust your financial secretary, number one, but you need to verify what your financial secretary is doing, because you're going to be the one that's accountable for it. And understand that these budget codes are intended to fund these things. And Dale, that was a long answer. I don't know if that's what you were getting
That's exactly what I want. We're trying to track the money from its source down to your building. That's what we're talking about. And you've got to spend money as it's intended. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul either.
You can't, and honestly, that's what the legislature, North and South Carolina, does.
Yes, they do that, but so they're politicians.
Saying, but you know what? They can do it. You cannot.
You cannot. That's it. That's where we've just hit the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. For some reason, school administrators have gotten this idea lately that because politicians who are duly elected come out and stump and give their opinion and make all these crazy proclamations and advance their political agendas and manipulate the money, for some reason, school administrators think they have that same license to do those things. The whole idea of me throwing this case in is you do not. The clerk from Kentucky, she thought because she held a paid administrative position that she had the right to deny gay people a marriage license because that was her personal belief. That woman, she's ruined financially. It's ruined her life. And I've got that court case, and I mean, she's now been held tort liable, personally liable. She's losing everything that she's ever, she'll never get out of the poorhouse. But people, for some reason, have decided, well, I can make this decision because I believe this in my heart and because I believe it's strong enough, and I heard some idiot politician advocating for that I can do what I want to do. And what school principals have to be really careful is make sure you spend the money as it's intended. And so the notion here on the Leandro case is very simple. You cannot manipulate the money the state gives you. You can't say, well, we're going to take this money and we're going to create this equity plan where we give different schools different amounts of money. You're not allowed to do that. The extension of that, and what I want you to understand, is the superintendent can't do it and you can't do it either. Although the superintendent might have this delusion of grandeur that he can or she can, they can't. And neither can you. You can't take the money that comes to your school for per pupil and say, we're going to take something from this group of kids over here and give it to this group of kids over here. You cannot do that. You can't spend money intended for one thing on something else. You can't put non-Title I, just like we know you can't put non-Title I kids in a Title I class and expect it because they need some extra help. That means you're taking something away from the kids that the money was intended to cover. If you put 25 in a class rather than 15, those 15 get less attention. They get less of what they're supposed to get and what the money is supposed to be in there. It's the same thing here. You can't take the state money and create small class sizes within your own building and another kid, he's over here in the class of 40 or 45. You can't do those kinds of things. You have to spend the money as it's intended. Leandro case is a clear case that runs all the way through school funding, and basically it says only the state can manipulate the money. Anybody after that cannot manipulate them, and that's what they said. The state's responsibility is they're the only one who's allowed to manipulate the money. Everybody else has to spend the money as intended. That is the bottom line. There's some other provisions in there, all those things, but the kernel of truth in the Leandro case is stay in your own lane. Spend the money as we tell you to. You don't have discretion to manipulate the money. That's what the Leandro case is telling you. Only the General Assembly, only the politicians can manipulate the money. And Steve is exactly right. The lottery is we've lost money in terms of capital in the districts over the lottery. The lottery money is pork barrel. Everybody doesn't get it equally. Districts have less money now than they had before in terms of their local revenue on capital, which comes from business, corporate, and real estate tax. That's where locals get their money through the county commissioners. That's now less. And so not only did the low wealth districts not get more, they ended up getting less because those people that pull money out of their counties for the lottery and they get hardly anything back. It's a regressive tax. And so the whole notion of me throwing this one in is to set the stage that when we go through school finance, the one thing that's the constant through all of school finance is only the General Assembly in the states can manipulate funding. You cannot. You have to know what money is spent for, and you can only spend it for that. And there might be something in your building that is worthwhile, that really you could make a difference taking some dollars from here and putting them over there. You're not allowed to do that. You must spend money as it's intended. You have different pots of money. And so you have federal, state, local and then your school-based funds. But even within those, you have different line items, and you have to know how they're all going to be spent. And I know that you might have some creative idea that somebody else or hadn't thought of, or would make a lot of sense in your building. If we could take a little money from here and string it together with some money over there, we could do this over here, and what a wonderful thing. No. Once you understand that up front, school, the likelihood of you doing something to get fired over the money decreases 1,000-fold. Where you get in trouble and get fired over the money is you start trying to get creative. You start deluding yourself that everybody will see that this is a better use of the money than what's intended. No, they won't. And now, part of what's going on as well here is if you're a school superintendent and you start giving more schools, some schools more money than others, and that becomes public, and the schools that you're not giving the money to happen to be the suburban schools that are more affluent, guess what happens to the students in those schools? What options do they have? What will happen to those students? Do you think they might opt for charters or privates? They're taking money from my child's school and giving to them poor people over there. My child's getting less. And so what happens to those parents now? What do? They flee you. What does that do to your test scores? What does that do? What does that do to the wealth of your district when most or all or some of your more affluent parents leave you? What happens? It only makes it worse for everybody else. So there's the political side, there's the legal side, which I want us to see tonight. But there's also the political side of this. It's not a good look to run off your more affluent people. That's never going to go well for you as a district, and you can do that as a principal as well. I had a parent come and complain one time that his child was in a gifted class and they didn't have a teacher assistant. And I said, you realize that this gifted position is funded mostly by the county, but there's no funding for an assistant. Said, well, they've got them over in exceptional children's classes. I said, those are, if my child can't have an assistant, I want you to take them out of that class over there. And I'm like, no, those are federally paid. Those are federally paid. So I thought it was a really ugly thing for the parent to say, if my kid can't have it, I want you to take it from somebody else. But that's the way a lot of parents think. And they monitor and they watch those kinds of things. And if you get caught manipulating the money so that some kid gets more than some other kid inside your building, that's not going to go well for you. It's not going to go well in terms of how you spent the money, but it's not going to go well for you politically either. I don't know that you'll survive that. That's one of those things that's hard to overcome. You've told some. So what people have to believe about you as an administrator is that you have the best interests of every child in your building at heart, and you've just proven that you don't. That's an unforgivable sin in our business.
And Dale, let me interrupt.
Yes, I'm pausing for you.
Yeah, I want you all. We said at the very beginning that Dale's going to present the bad side, and I'm going to present the good side. Mm-hmm. And so he's done a very good job of presenting the bad side. Let me tell you that, and I said this to you before. Money is traceable. So you have budget codes that take it all the way from the school district, from the funding source of federal, state, local, to the school district, to the school, to the department, to the classroom, to the child. It goes all the way down. You can trace every penny that you spend. Now, there are ways to manipulate that, but the honest principles, which are the 98% of them, are going to spend it the way it's intended. And so when that person comes and says, you're treating this group better than this group, this classroom better than this classroom, you're able to show whoever the track of the money. And it is your defense. And that, by the way, is public record. So you can do that. All the way down to the child. The child is a number, it's not a person. So there's no way that that you're not going to be able to defend yourself with how money is spent. So let's go back to what Dale was talking about at the beginning. And that is, you have the guidebook. Here's how you spend the money. And it takes it all the way through. There are principals that know how to manipulate that. And when you choose to start manipulating is when you get in trouble. So Dale is presenting you the trouble. What I'm going to present you is, I know all 5 of you. I would trust you with anything. Do what you know to do. Here's the budget cut. Just spend it the way it's intended to be spent. And everything is everybody going to be happy? Absolutely not. But you are doing what you are legally bound to do in an ethical fashion to the best of your ability. And we'll make it work. And, you know, I've got a 32-and-a-half-year career. Dale's got a 64-year career. And both of us can be accused of a lot of things because people don't like us, but none can say you mismanaged your money or that you treated one group favorably and another group unfavorably, because we both did. We've talked about this. We both did what the quote book said you do. And I never had a person to say, to come in. I had plenty of people come in and say, you spent this money wrong. But I never had a person to leave and say, you spent this money wrong. Because I could always prove it. And so I want you to know there are things in place that are going to protect you. So this should not be a worrisome thing for you. And that's why I keep telling you, he's going to tell you all these things. Oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. Well, he does that so you'll know it is a conflict job. But the truth of the matter is, it's also a good job.
It's a great job.
And we have a lot of things in place that help your job go better. So I had to get that into that.
Oh yeah. But part of what makes this such a great job is the good that you can do for people. That's what makes it a good job. But if you take everything personally, you know, I think when I opened up the story about my friend John, I think John had forgotten the reason he got out of the high school business was he took everything personally. He got back into elementary school where things were much calmer and nicer. And I think he'd forgotten that. And then when he took a job in the complaint department, again, he couldn't leave it at home every day. He carried it home with him. And so there's going to be people, there's going to be detractors out there. It's not going to be, but you can make a difference in the lives of teachers and students. And that's why you do this. But it's not always going to be smooth sailing if you're a person who takes it personally. But I agree 1,000%. I believe the ethical concern of each of you, especially of ethic, that you won't have any problem intentionally doing something. But there's pressures, and I'll leave you with my final story tonight. I'm watching our clock here. I think I told you the story about I had to make a visit at the same place, same school within 2 weeks because the principal lost his job. It was down in eastern North Carolina. You go down to about Duplin County and then cut across like you're going to Topsail out in the middle of nowhere. And I got there, they were doing a Title I audit. 2 third-grade teachers had screamed and yelled at the principal to the point where he couldn't take it anymore. And he finally decided that he gave in, and he put non-Title Title I kids in the Title I teachers class in order to balance the load in 3rd grade, you know, to try to make his, you know, to try to make his life better every day, and for them to quit screaming and yelling at him. And of course, the Title I teacher immediately called and reported it, and they came and did an audit. And I had to go back 2 weeks later to meet the new principal. And so it wasn't that he was a bad person. It wasn't that he didn't know not to do that. He just got tired of the screams and the yells and people putting pressure on him, and to the point where he finally gave in. And that's kind of my benediction for the evening is everybody's not going to like you doing the right thing, but the right thing is always the right thing. And you can't bow to the pressure of people who are wanting special favors or exemptions, or they're wanting something from you that you just can't give. That good people will ask you to do things that are in their self-interest, or maybe even they think are in the interest of the children in their rooms. But you know, in the end, it's not that people are crooked and shysters, and there's just a lot of pressure in the job. And it's not you want to be a bad person, or you want to disregard, or you're a political ideologue. Sometimes it's just that the pressure gets so great that it's just easier to go along to get along. And what you have to understand about school funding is it's pretty much black and white. It's not, there's not a lot of gray. Either you spend it on what you were supposed to or you didn't. And it's one of those areas that's the easiest to catch you in, that you spent money somewhere where you weren't supposed to spend it. So again, listen to your financial secretary. They can help you with those things. Make sure that you understand that you can't just, that there's going to be pressure. There always is, but it is a great job, and that you could, the good that you can do. But in the end, you have to follow the rules with the money. That's the lesson of the Leandro case is there that you can't do what you want to do. You do what you have to do, and if you do, you'll be fine. So, does anybody have anything that they'd like to add from the case tonight?
Can I ask, is the low wealth money associated with Leandro, or is that something different that all our schools get?
It is not directly from Leandro. There was no, Leandro led to the lottery. The low wealth money came later.
Okay. Because I know a lot of low wealth money.
Yeah, it didn't. Leandro didn't set aside any money. They refused to do that in Leandro. They revisited this a number of years later, like in 2004 and 2007. There was a revisit from 2018. They have revisited Leandro several times, but there was no direct money that came from Leandro.
Actually, Wendy, that's partially true, but the low wealth money is an offshoot.
Mm-hmm.
It was not initially.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But it evolved from Leandro, and the state wrestled how to fix this.
Because I know
the low wealth came into play, and then and this is showing my age. I can't remember what they titled it, but it was 24 money, which was another pot of money that the state put into play. Because the districts that were not viewed as low wealth said, wait a minute, we have students that are high poverty students as well. So they put another pot in. So you had a low wealth pot and another 24 money pot. Dale, do you remember the name of that? I can't.
That's why I'm just sitting here trying to think.
Yeah, the low wealth, I believe, was 31 money, and
it's 31 money, but they have Leandro money in the district. That's why.
2004, they started revisiting in terms of looking to some money. So the question was, the money didn't come directly from the Leandro. The Leandro decision or ruling did not allot any money. When they went back, and that's why I said that now they have revisited, that money came from the revisits.
Yeah.
is where that money came from. The first came in 2004. And then, as I said, and then I want to say 2011, and then there was actually a revisit again last year. The revisits is where the money came from.
Yeah.
But no, the original Leandro decision did not move any money.
Right.
The revisits, the provisions that set apart from that are where the money came from on the revisits. But no.
And I want to point out that Aaron and Crystal are in our beautiful neighbors to the south, and we talked about this before, but you have the corridor of shame going down 95, and South Carolina's dealing with the same thing. That the South Carolina legislature has been a little bit more entrenched on how to equalize, quote, the funding. That said, they're on a totally different kind of taxation piece than North Carolina is, with the millage and everything else. And both of you, Aaron and Crystal, are in wealthier districts that have a tax base that can support. And so what the South Carolina legislature is battling again is okay, are we gonna take from Rock Hill and Fort Mill to give to Orangeburg and Dillon and Sumter and those places along the 95 corridor? They in some ways, I think if you looked at your particular district's budget, you would see that they do indeed do that. That you get far less state money than Orangeburg and Sumter and those places, because you are able to infuse a lot of local money because of your tax base. So they do try, but they still have not figured out a way to take care of the corridor of shame to the way it ought to be. And Dale, I think you were talking about 2004. So that's 15 years ago. And Wendy will tell you what she sees in Robinson County today. I mean, we haven't fixed it, have we, Wendy?
No, far from it.
Yeah. So it's just a tremendous challenge to take care of poorer districts. But if you and I know the time too, Dale and friends.
No.
If you look at what he was talking about of you as a school-based administrator, and this parent comes in and says, I want you to take that teacher assistant from this class and put it in my child's class. Well, indeed, that's what we're talking about here. Charlotte Mecklenburg in North Carolina, Wake County in North Carolina, Guilford County in North Carolina, even Iredell Statesville, Jody. We want to take from you and give it to Wendy's district. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to cause the people in those more affluent districts, the ones that can afford it, to say, I don't want to be a part of this public school system. And if Aaron and Crystal had that happen in Rock Hill and Fort Mill, those people would say the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I pay taxes here in this district for my child, for my community. Why are you taking from me to give to Orangeburg and Sumter? And it's a real tough political situation. And that's the beauty, not the beauty, the interest in this court case and legislation that accompanies it. Okay, Dale, you got 6 minutes. I'm shutting up.
All right, but you can see that the Andrew case was decided in 1997. I actually worked on this case out of the Law Center in Chapel Hill. As I said, the first money came 7 years later in 2004. Did not come directly of the ruling. And so what Steve is telling you is, when people say did this money come from Leandro? The answer will always be no. Leandro will not manipulate the money. It won't take from one and give to the other. The poverty money, the low wealth money, came as a separate appropriation starting in 2004. And so there's never, it's a be clear, Leandro has never addressed unequal fund, has never addressed we're going to give more state money more to one group than the other. Absolutely. They have not as a system of funding. The flat funding is still in place after all these years. 22 years later, flat funding is still in place. What has happened is, starting in 2004, additional low wealth money was found. That's what we're talking about because of what Steve just explained to you. It's hard to tell people in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we're going to take the money that you've taxed yourself here. You're paying a penny and a half more sales tax, and your property tax millage has gone up X percent in order to fund your schools. But oh, by the way, we're going to take your money and give to these people over here that aren't willing to do either of those things. They're not willing to move their property taxes up. They're not willing to pay a penny and a half more sales tax. But we want you to do that and pay for their kids. Can you imagine how that would go over? That's what, so the notion here of this case tonight is you can't do that. You got to follow the funding formula. There is some money coming from low wealth, but it is not but it's money that comes in a pot for that. But the whole notion here is from the very top all the way down with federal, state, local. You got to spend the money as it comes to you. Even if you think you have a better idea, it does not matter. Federal money can only be spent on what it's designated for. State money the same way. Local money, and then your school money, you must supply your superintendent with a budget that even says this is how much money we're going to raise this year, and this is what we're going to spend it on, and it better have a link back to your school improvement plan. So if you know that going in, you don't get caught in that discretion trap. I made this decision based on my discretion. Discretion does not trump the law. It's just that simple. And so you have a lot of power and authority as a principal. It's the most powerful job in the school business, but you can't diddle the money. You got to do what you're supposed to do with the money. It's just that simple. That's what tonight's lesson is all about. Anybody have anything else for the good of the group? Look here.
I got to speak to everybody but Candace. How are you doing, Candace?
We slid in. You know, Candace is doing great. She's in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Just waiting on them to pass this budget, so maybe I can get a little bit of a raise, 50 cent, quarter.
Yeah, I know. Get you. I don't know if you can afford to eat out on that raise, but maybe you get you a drink and a pack of nabs.
That's it. Maybe I can add some guacamole to my meal.
Yeah, that's 50 cent extra. Every time I go to Moe's, they look at me like I hadn't got that 50 cents. Besides me, it look like I have trouble buying food.
You don't have any trouble eating it.
No, I don't have any trouble paying for the food. I can tell you that. Well, I've enjoyed tonight. We'll be back on next week again with case study 3. Is that correct? All right. So case study 3 is Bobby, isn't it? No, that's Willie and Jimmy. Willie and Jimmy next week. So we'll talk about Willie and Jimmy. I appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll send the video out later on and post it tonight. See y'all next week.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.